This is TWiT.
Here's where the world comes crashing down on us. If we have a new car, or a newer than 19-year-old car like Steve has apparently, we might not be so happy about that after hearing this story.
So, well, to be, as we often say, to be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Sure.
I titled this piece, "The Car I Drive is 19 Years Old and I'm More Glad Than Ever." The reason is it's a car. It's not a continuously connected mobile entertainment system on wheels.
Right.
It's a car. It does what a car is supposed to do. It moves my butt from one place to another. The reason I'm more glad than ever that all my car does is move me is that I read the research that was just conducted and published last Wednesday by the Mozilla Foundation. They titled this, "It's Official. Cars are the worst product category we have ever reviewed for privacy."
Oh, no.
And a subhead might be 25 car brands tested and 25 car brands failed. So here's what their research uncovered. I've edited their posting a little bit for the podcast. They said, the wind in your hair, the open road ahead, and not a care in the world. Except for all the trackers, cameras, microphones, and sensors capturing your every move. Ugh, modern cars are a privacy nightmare, they wrote. Car makers have been bragging about their cars being computers on wheels for years to promote their advanced features. However, the conversation about what driving a computer means for its occupants' privacy hasn't really caught up. And as we'll see, I make this point later. I think that's exactly the case. It's happened quickly and we haven't caught up. They said, while we worried that our doorbells and watches that connect us to the internet might be spying on us, car brands quietly entered the data business by turning their vehicles into powerful data-gobbling machines. Machines that, because of all those brag-worthy bells and whistles, have an unmatched power to watch, listen, and collect information about what you do and where you go in your car. All 25 car brands we researched earned our privacy not included warning label, making cars the official worst category of products for privacy that we have ever reviewed. The car brands we researched are terrible at privacy and security. For one thing, they collect too much personal data, every single one of them. We reviewed 25 car brands in our research, and we handed out 25 dings, as in a dent in your car, 25 dings for how those companies collect and use data and personal information. That's right. Every car brand we looked at collects more personal data than necessary and uses that information for a reason other than to operate your vehicle and manage their relationship with you. For context, only 23% of the, by comparison, only 63% by comparison of the mental health apps. And they said a product category that stinks at privacy we reviewed this year received this ding, but it was 100% for automobiles. So cars are worse than mental health apps at managing privacy is their point. They said, and car companies have so many more data collecting opportunities than other products and apps we use, more than even smart devices in our homes or cell phones we take wherever we go. They can collect personal information from how you interact with your car, the connected services you use in your car, the car's app, which provides a gateway to information on your phone, and can gather even more information about you from third-party sources like SiriusXM or Google Maps. It's a mess. The ways car companies collect and share your data are so vast and complicated that we wrote an entire piece on how that works. The gist is they can collect super intimate information about you, from your medical information, your genetic information, to your sex life. Then they put in parentheses, seriously, to how fast you drive, where you drive, and what songs you play in your car in huge quantities. They then use it to invent more data about you through inferences about things like your intelligence, your abilities, and your interests. And get this, most, 84%, share or sell that data. Okay, and now just to stop here, that was the surprise to me. It's like, what? They are data retailers. They are retailing the data that they're collecting about their drivers. Mozilla said it's bad enough for the behemoth corporations that own the car brands to have all that personal information in their possession to use for their own research, marketing, or the ultra-vague business purposes, unquote. But then most, 84% of the car brands we researched say they can share your personal data with service providers, data brokers, or other businesses we know little to nothing about. And worse, 19 of the 25, which would be 76%, say they can sell your personal data. A surprising number, 56% of those, also of the total 25, also say they can share your information with the government or law enforcement in response to a request, unquote. And they write, not merely a high bar court order, but something as easy as an informal request, a very low bar. Car companies' willingness to share your data is beyond creepy, writes Mozilla. It has the potential to cause real harm and inspired our worst cars and privacy nightmares. And keep in mind, they say, that we only know what companies do with your personal data because of the privacy laws that make it illegal not to disclose that information, such as California's Consumer Privacy Act. So-called anonymized and aggregated data can and probably is shared too with vehicle data hubs, who are the data brokers of the auto industry and others. So while you're getting from point A to point B, you're also funding your car's thriving side hustle in the data business in more ways than one. Next, most, 92% in their study, give drivers little to no control over their personal data. All but 2 of the 25 car brands we reviewed earned our ding for data control, meaning only 2 car brands, Renault and Dacia, both owned by the same parent company, say that all drivers have the right to have their personal data deleted. None of the others do. While we would like to think this deviation from the norm is one car company taking a stand for drivers' privacy, it's probably no coincidence that these cars are only available in Europe, which is protected by the robust General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR privacy law. In other words, car brands often do whatever they can legally get away with to your personal data. They wrote, we could not confirm whether any of them meet our minimum security standards. They said it's so strange to us that dating apps and sex toys publish more detailed security information than cars. Even though the car brands we researched each had several long-winded privacy policies, Toyota wins with 12. We could not find confirmation that any of the brands meet our minimum security standards. Our main concern is that we can't tell whether any of the cars encrypt the personal information that sits on the car, And that's the bare minimum. We don't call them our state-of-the-art security standards, after all. They're our minimum security standards. We reached out, as we always do by email, to ask for clarity. But most of the car companies completely ignored us. Those who at least responded, Mercedes-Benz, Honda, and technically Ford, still didn't completely answer our basic security questions. A failure to properly address cybersecurity might explain their frankly embarrassing security and privacy track records. We only looked at the last 3 years, but still found plenty to go on, with 17 of them, that's 68% of the car brands, earning the bad track record ding for leaks, hacks, and breaches that threatened their drivers' privacy. Okay, so then in the article, they provide a car-by-car table of these transgressions, several columns of classification of problems by 25 rows for each of the car brands. But frankly, the table's not worth examining. They're all really bad. I think that, as I said, I think we're seeing a classic case of oversight. This is a recently emerged feature category that no one has yet really focused on. And boy, I really do hope that the privacy people take a look at this and say, whoa, what? It's still the Wild West out there. So they had then a few additional points. They said, Tesla is only the second product we have ever reviewed to receive all of our privacy dings. The first was an AI chatbot we reviewed earlier this year. They said what set them apart was earning the untrustworthy AI ding. Tesla's AI-powered autopilot was reportedly involved in 17 deaths and 736 crashes, and is currently the subject of multiple government investigations. So, ouch. Nissan earned its second to last spot for collecting some of the creepiest categories of data we have ever seen. They wrote, it's worth reading the review in full, but you should know it includes your sexual activity. Not to be outdone, Kia also mentions they can collect information about your sex life in their privacy policy. Oh, and 6 car companies say they can collect your genetic information or genetic characteristics. They said, yes, reading car privacy policies is a scary endeavor. Okay, now I'll just interject here to suggest that the fact that it can be done doesn't mean that it is being done or has ever been done. These sorts of statements in privacy policies feel like overly broad policies that arise after some wingnut brings an unfounded lawsuit against an automaker. That the firm's attorneys will then overreact by adding a clause stating, for example, they cannot be held responsible for anything that happens if you're picked up by space aliens while operating their motor vehicle. This is not meant to suggest that, those things will happen if you're abducted. They're just saying, if they should, then don't go suing us because the policy you already agreed to by driving our car says it's not our fault if something happens. So, and with regard to references to sexual activity and sex life, that could refer to the car's GPS recording. The GPS is recording where you're going. And so if it's used after the fact to infer something about the driver based upon when they went where, well, then again, that's, they've included a broad exclusion because of some past lawsuit that they suffered. So, that's probably what that is about, I hope. Mozilla also said None of the car brands use language that meets Mozilla's privacy standard about sharing information with the government or law enforcement. But Hyundai goes above and beyond. In their privacy policy, it says they'll comply with lawful requests, whether formal or informal. All of the car brands on this list, except for Tesla, Renault, and Dacia, signed on to a list of consumer protection principles from the U.S. automotive industry group Alliance for Automotive Innovation, Inc. The list includes great privacy-preserving principles such as data minimization, transparency, and choice. But how many of the car brands actually follow these principles? 0. It's interesting, if only because it means the car companies do clearly know what they should be doing to respect your privacy, even though they absolutely don't do it. This is usually where we'd encourage you to read our reviews and to choose the products you can trust when you can. But unfortunately, cars aren't really like that. Sure, there are some steps you can take to protect more of your privacy, and we've listed them all in each of our reviews under tips to protect yourself. They're definitely worth doing. You can also avoid using your car's app or limit its permissions on your phone. But compared to all the data collection you can't control, these steps feel like tiny drops in a massive bucket. Plus, you deserve to benefit from all the features you pay for without also having to give up your privacy. And they finish. We spent over 600 hours researching the car brands' privacy practices. That's 3 times as much time per product than we normally spend. Even so, we were left with so many questions. None of the privacy policies promise a full picture of how your data is used and shared. If 3 privacy researchers, that's how many they had on this project, can barely get to the bottom of what's going on with cars, how does the average time-pressed person stand a chance?
No kidding.
Many people have lifestyles that require driving. So unlike a smart faucet or voice assistant, you don't have the same freedom to opt out of the whole thing and not drive a car at all. We've talked about the murky ways that companies can manipulate your consent, and car companies are no exception. Often, they ignore your consent. Sometimes, they assume it. Car companies do that by assuming that you have read and agreed to their policies before you step foot in their cars. Subaru's privacy policy even says that the passengers of a car that use connected services have consented to allow them to use and maybe even sell their personal information just by being in the car. So when car companies say they have your consent or won't do something without your consent, it often means what it should. So, as I said, I think this is an area that has until now escaped oversight. Hopefully, research like this, which puts the problem squarely on the map, will eventually help that to happen. And, wow, we are, we're driving around inside of connected computers, Jason, and, they do indeed have sensors galore. They're connected. They know where we are. They know what time it is. They know everything we do with our computerized entertainment systems, what stations we're listening to. I mean, you could imagine.
They're filled with cameras.
Are they not going to monetize that? Why would we imagine they would
of course
not monetize that?
Yeah, I mean, none of this is that. I mean, it's shocking, but it's also unsurprising, right?
I guess it's saddening.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's it's saddening.
Yeah. It is saddening, but at the same time, like, we live in the data economy, and man, at this point, I just feel so beaten down about like how my data is used all over the place. Like, it would be easy for me to be like, well, but I carry around a smartphone and it does a lot of those things, and apparently I've said that that's okay because I still have a smartphone and have for years. But I mean, you're right. Vehicles, have the potential of having cars inside that can be monitored potentially. And that's just one example. And it's always following you wherever you go. So
Yeah.
that data has value. That's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, and I guess it seems to me that the minimum we could request is the ability for transparency, to know exactly what data is being collected,
Yeah.
and then the ability to ask for it to be deleted. And, true, most drivers never will. They're not listening to this podcast. They're just not concerned. They go, oh yeah, well, whatever. But the good news is there is legislation which is moving in this direction, which gives consumers control if they want it.
Totally.
And at this point, the automobile industry is way behind on that score.
Obviously so.
Oh, hey, that's a really nice iPhone you have there. You totally picked the right color. Hey, since you do use an iPhone and maybe use an iPad or an Apple Watch or an Apple TV, well, you should check out iOS Today. It's a show that I, Micah Sargent, and my co-host Rosemary Orchard host every Tuesday right here on the TWiT network. It covers all things iOS, tvOS, HomePodOS, watchOS, iPadOS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we love to give you tips and tricks about making the most of those devices, checking out great apps and services, and answering your tech questions. I hope you check it out.